The forest was alive with whispers of old pain, every leaf trembling under the weight of the wind, and the pack moved through the shadows as one heartbeat pulsing in rhythm with the earth. The alpha led the way, his fur bristling with anger, every step measured yet urgent pause pressing into the damp soil, following a scent that burned in his nostrils. The other wolves followed close behind, ears flicking to catch the slightest sound, their eyes sharp and wide, scanning the darkness for signs. Of the ones who had dared to steal from them, the cubs had been taken too young, too innocent, and the memory of their cries haunted the alpha like a knife, twisting endlessly in his chest. He could smell the lingering traces of fear, the faint temp of strangers, and the faint coppery scent of blood in the underbrush. It made his muscles coil and his jaw ache with the need to strike. They moved past broken branches and trampled ferns, their presence leaving an almost invisible trail in the forest. Yet the forest itself seemed to sense their anger and parted around them, giving space for their rage to grow. The alpha paused briefly, sniffing the wind, a faint scent of smoke, an unfamiliar human presence brushing against the edges of the trail. Curiosity stirring in the deepest part of his mind, but he ignored it for now. Vengeance was stronger than caution, and the pack pressed on deeper into the dark heart of the forest. Shadows shifted under the moonlight and the soft sound of paw. Earth was the only thing breaking the night. The alpha lifted his head and let out a low rumble that vibrated through the trees, a warning to whatever had dared to cross them, or perhaps a call to the cubs he hoped to find alive. The pack answered in kind, their growls a chorus of fury and determination. Their bodies moved like flowing water over rocks and roots, never pausing, never faltering, driven by the unspoken bond of family and the desire to reclaim what had been stolen. The wind carried their scent forward, and they followed it relentlessly, every leaf snapping underfoot, every rustle of underbrush, a reminder of how close they were to the end of their search and the beginning of the reckoning that had been brewing in their hearts. For too long the alpha's mind raced as the pack moved through the dense underbrush, every step bringing him closer to the memory that refused to fade. The night of the attack played over and over in his mind, the roar of flames licking the edges of their den, the screams of his cubs carried on the wind, and the sharp stench of smoke and fear that had clung to everything. The pack had been scattered that night, some injured, some lost, and the cubs had vanished into the hands of strangers. The alpha had sworn vengeance then, and the promise had burned inside him, ever since a fire hotter than anything the forest could hold. His paws struck the earth with purpose, and his muscles ached with the power coiled in them. The scent trail grew stronger, and with it, the tension in his chest tightened his senses, heightening every smell, every whisper of movement in the trees. Every wolf in the pack felt the weight of the alpha's memory in their bones, and they followed silently, sharing in the grief and anger that radiated from him. The forest itself seemed to respond to their pain, the shadows lengthening and twisting around them, the air thick with the scent of moss and decay, and something unfamiliar but undeniable just ahead. The alpha lifted his head, nostrils flaring, his ears catching the faintest sound of movement, not of wolves, not of the forest, but of something human, and the memories of that night clashed with the curiosity clawing at him. His jaw clenched, and the low growl in his throat rumbled like distant thunder, warning and longing, all at once. The wind carried whispers of the past and hints of the present, and the pack pressed on, driven by the alpha's fury and the fragile hope that they would find their cubs alive. The trees bent and swayed as if leaning closer to witness the hunt, and the memory of the cubs trembling in the darkness filled the alpha's mind, pushing him forward faster, his heart pounding in sync with the steady rhythm of the forest floor beneath him. Every rustle, every snap, every faint scent of smoke and fur made his muscles tighten, and the pack moved as one, breathing one living weapon of memory and vengeance, coiled and ready for what waited just beyond the next shadow. In the dark heart of the forest, where past and present would finally collide, the trail led deeper into the forest's thick trees. Looming overhead, their branches tangled like twisted fingers blocking the fading light. The alpha moved with purpose, nostrils flaring, picking up every scent, every trace of the cubs, the remnants of their fear, and the faint temps of human presence mingling with it. His paws pressed into the soft earth, leaving impressions that would fade with the wind, but his mind clung to every detail. The pack followed silently, muscles coiled, ears flicking to catch the slightest movement of bird or insect or Predator, unknown, the forest seemed alive with anticipation. Every rustle, a whisper of what lay ahead, every broken twig and crushed fern spoke to them of passage and of struggle, and the alpha's heart thumped harder with the mix of hope and rage that drove him forward. The scent of their cubs grew stronger, mingled with a faint metallic temps that made his stomach tighten, and the low rumble in his chest grew deeper. The pack moved as one shadow among shadows, moving over roots and fallen leaves, their eyes sharp for any sign of danger, or the cubs themselves. The alpha lifted his head for a brief moment, sniffing the air sharp and alive, and the wind carried the faintest cry, the softest sound of life, that made his muscles tense and his fur rise, instinct and memory clashing in his chest. The trail twisted and turned around gnarled trees, over mossy stones and through patches of ferns, each step bringing them closer to the unknown yet familiar presence that tugged at the alpha's heart. His pack mirrored his focus, following every movement, every sniff, every flick of his tail. The forest seemed to hold its breath as they pressed on through the shadows, the memory of the stolen night and the hope of finding their cubs alive, driving them onward, unstoppable, relentless and silent. In the half-light of the waning day, a faint sound drifted through the trees, a soft, irregular rhythm that was unlike the rustle of leaves or the scurry of small animals. The alpha paused, his ears flicking forward, nostrils quivering as he caught it again, a gentle breathing, steady and calm, and yet, somehow strange, to the forest. He lowered his head and sniffed the air. The scent was human, warm, and familiar, yet foreign, mingled with the unmistakable sweetness of his cubs. His muscles tensed and a low growl rumbled deep in his chest, a warning and a question. All at once the pack slowed, instinctively following his lead, their bodies rigid and alert, as if the forest itself had told them to move with care. Every paw step was measured over roots and soft moss, the alpha leading with the precision of memory and the urgency of hope. The sound came again, soft and rhythmic, and it made his heart thump harder, the rhythm pulling at something deep inside him, curiosity brushing against his rage. The wind shifted, carrying more of the scent, hints of warmth and softness and life that did not belong to the forest, and it tugged at the alpha's mind, making him hesitate for the first time in long moments. His eyes scanned the shadows, ears twitching at every movement, branches swayed with nothing visible, and yet the sound persisted, faint and gentle like a heartbeat. Outside the normal pulse of the wild, the pack mirrored his caution, circling lightly, noses low, sniffing the air and earth, the alpha pausing to decide whether to push forward or strike. In instinctive fury, the cubs were near. He could feel it deep in his chest, their scent mixed with the foreign warmth, and it made his jaw tighten and his muscles coil like springs, ready to leap. The forest seemed suspended around them, time stretching each moment into eternity, the distant call of a bird, the whisper of leaves, the faintest brush of wind carrying the hint of life they had been searching for. The alpha's eyes narrowed, focusing on the unseen source, the soft breathing pulling him onward yet demanding patience for the first fragile sign of what waited just beyond the shadowed trees, and the pack waited with him, tense and silent, knowing that the moment of discovery was close and that it would change everything. The clearing opened before them, sunlight spilling through the branches, revealing a small patch of soft earth, and the unexpected sight of a human lying there, chest rising and falling, with steady calmness, and upon that chest curled the cubs, sleeping as if nothing in the world could harm them. The alpha froze, his eyes wide, nostrils flaring, drinking in the sense of fur and skin, and the faint trace of warmth that made his muscles tighten and his chest ache. The pack halted behind him, bodies, coiled ears flicking, eyes sharp, every instinct screaming for caution, and yet confusion and awe mixed with the rage that had driven them this far. The cubs twitched slightly in their sleep, paws stretching and ears flicking, and the human shifted, gently, careful not to disturb them. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird fading into the silence that wrapped the clearing like a soft blanket. The alpha stepped forward, slow, deliberate, his gaze fixed on the fragile forms of his young, and the creature who dared to hold them so gently. His jaw clenched, a low rumble vibrating through his chest. The pack circling behind him, tense and alert, ready to defend or attack as needed. The smell of the cubs mixed with the warmth and the strange human scent, creating a confusion in his mind, heart and instincts clashing violently. He paused, nose twitching, eyes scanning every detail of the human and the sleeping cubs, his tail flicking slightly, a silent question hanging in the air as the sunlight touched fur and skin alike, and the forest waited for the alpha to make the first move in the clearing. Where the past and the present collided, the alpha's muscles coiled and uncoiled, his mind torn between the fire of his instinct and the strange calm that surrounded the human holding his cubs. The pack mirrored his tension, circling silently, eyes sharp, ears flicking every shadow, every whisper of movement in the trees. Their growls were low and restrained warnings held back by the alpha's hesitation. His gaze flicked from the sleeping cubs to the human, whose chest rose and fell with measured calmness, and the alpha felt a strange stirring in his chest that he did not understand. Curiosity and suspicion and the pull of protectiveness all tangled into a tight knot. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, careful not to startle the cubs, the scent of warmth mingling with fur making the low rumble in his throat falter. The human shifted slightly, careful hands brushing against the sleeping cubs, and the alpha's mind flashed with memories of the stolen night. The fear, the chaos, the fire, and yet now the cubs were alive and safe in this fragile human embrace. His tail twitched, once a signal to the pack to hold their positions, and they obeyed, silent shadows waiting for the alpha to make the next move. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled light across fur and skin, and the alpha's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in focus. He studied every motion, every breath the cubs made, as if reading the air for threats. His instincts screamed reclaim and strike, protect and warn, and yet another voice whispered patience, watch, understand, and the tension in his chest stretched taut like a drawn bow. The forest seemed to hold its breath, every leaf and branch waiting for the alpha to decide the fate of his cubs and the human, who had become an unexpected guardian in the stillness of the clearing where instinct and curiosity battled for dominance, and the next heartbeat could change everything. The pack circled the clearing, moving with the silent precision of shadows, muscles coiled and eyes sharp, every member aware of the fragile moment unfolding before them. The alpha led the circle, slow, deliberate steps, nostrils twitching and ears alert, picking up the faintest hints of the cub's breathing and the human's calm warmth. Each wolf mirrored his tension, bodies low, tails flicking occasionally in silent communication, as if the forest itself had instructed them to wait and watch. The cubs stirred slightly, stretching paws and tails, curling closer against the human, who shifted to accommodate them, gentle hands brushing against fur in quiet reassurance. The alpha lowered his head a fraction, sniffing the air, the scents mingling in a way that made his chest tighten. Instinct warred with curiosity, and the low rumble in his throat vibrated with uncertainty. The pack remained still, ready to pounce, to protect or attack as needed, their loyalty to the alpha absolute, yet every movement measured by the subtle shifts in his stance. The wind carried the scents further, mixing the earthy temps of the forest with the warmth of the cubs and the faint, unfamiliar scent of the human, who had become an unexpected anchor in this tense tableau. Time seemed suspended, the leaves barely trembling, the distant bird calls fading into silence, as if the forest itself held its breath. The alpha's eyes never left the human and the sleeping cubs, studying every gentle movement, every careful breath. His tail flicked once, signaling the pack to remain patient, and the pack obeyed, circling in quiet anticipation. The tension in the air thick with unspoken questions, instincts held in check by trust, and the strange fragile bond that was beginning to form between fur and skin, heart and soul, in the stillness of the clearing where every heartbeat could tip the balance between vengeance and understanding. The alpha stepped forward, slow, deliberate, each paw landing softly on the forest floor, his eyes fixed on the human and the cubs. His muscles were tense, coiled like springs, ready to leap, yet held back by the strange pull in his chest that whispered patience. The cubs stirred slightly, nudging against the human, and the alpha felt the fire of his instinct clash with the unexpected calm that radiated from the creature before him. The pack circled behind him, their bodies low and taut, ears flicking every subtle sound, yet they did not advance, waiting for the alpha to decide. The sunlight filtering through the canopy highlighted the contours of fur and skin, the warmth of life and the fragility of the moment. The alpha lowered his head, sniffing the air, the scent of cubs and human mingling in a way that both reassured and confused him. A low rumble vibrated through his chest, a warning and a question, and he paused long enough for the forest to hold its breath, time stretching as if waiting for the decision that would change everything. His eyes softened slightly as he studied the gentle rise and fall of the cubs' chests and the careful movements of the human, whose presence was strange yet calming. His tail flicked once, signaling the pack to hold their ground, and they obeyed, silent and tense, ready to defend or strike, but trusting the alpha's judgment. The clearing seemed suspended in a delicate balance, the past and the present, converging in this single heartbeat, and the Alpha's pause became the pivot upon which the fragile peace of the forest rested. The Alpha lowered his head slowly, nostrils quivering, as he drank in the sense of his cubs and the human. The warmth and softness of life, mingling with the sharp tang of the forest. His eyes locked on the gentle rise and fall of the cubs' chests, and the careful movements of the human who had cradled them with such quiet reverence. The pack waited silently, circling in tense obedience, every muscle coiled ready for action, yet restrained by the authority of the Alpha. The low rumble in his chest shifted from warning to consideration. Instinct warred with something new, curiosity and understanding blending in ways he had never known. His paw shifted slightly forward, and the cubs stirred, nudging closer to the human. The Alpha sniffed once, then twice, the scent of familiarity and safety washing over him. And a strange softness eased the fire of vengeance that had driven him for so long. The forest seemed to exhale as the tension melted into cautious peace. Shadows stretched and swayed around them, the rustle of leaves whispering approval, and the distant bird calls returning to the canopy. The Alpha turned his gaze briefly to the pack, who mirrored his movements, pausing to study the human who had become a guardian of their young. The cubs blinked awake, stretching and yawning, and the human smiled gently, whispering words the Alpha could not understand, yet felt in the vibrations of the air. His tail flicked once, a signal to the pack, and they relaxed their stance, slowly closing the circle around the clearing, a silent acknowledgement that for now there was no threat, only trust forming in the delicate balance of life. The Alpha stepped closer to the cubs, nudging them gently with his nose, and they squeaked in delight. Curling closer to the warmth of the human, the forest seemed to shimmer with the fragile peace that had been won. And the Alpha lingered in the sunlight of the clearing, heart and mind opening to a bond that transcended instinct and vengeance, teaching him that protection and understanding could coexist, and that sometimes the fiercest pack could find harmony in the most unexpected of alliances.